I am Flora Bennett, 35 years old, a financial analyst based in Seattle, where I spend my days poring over numbers, making sure everything balances, at least on the spreadsheets. My life with Ethan, my 37-year-old husband who works as a software engineer, and our 3 children, Liam, 10, obsessed with basketball, Sophie, 7, constantly drawing, and Ava, 5, always chattering away with her stories, seemed stable. But everything changed on a summer morning when we set off for Vancouver, Canada, for a family gathering. I had no idea that trip would shatter the world I thought I knew. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Our car was packed with juice boxes, cookies, and a pop playlist that Sophie had carefully curated. I was the one driving as usual because Ethan's habit of braking hard always made me nauseous. Liam was in the back seat, scrolling through his phone, trying to figure out how to code a new game. Ava was singing along to an animated movie on her iPad, her small voice blending into the hum of the engine. The atmosphere was ordinary, even a little dull, exactly how I liked it. But everything shifted just as we approached the border crossing into Canada. Ethan suddenly gripped the edge of his seat, his knuckles white, his face drained of color. He leaned toward me and whispered in a tone I had never heard from him before, "Turn the car around, Flora." Right now. I thought he was joking. What? Why? I glanced at him, confused. But his eyes, sharp, icy, filled with something between panic and resolve, sent a chill through me. Ethan never panicked. He had once calmly put out a kitchen fire while I was screaming in the hallway. He was the level-headed one. "Please," he repeated, his voice low and urgent, almost pleading. "Just turn around." I didn't argue. My heart began to pound, and without another word, I pulled into the last exit before the checkpoint, taking a sharp turn onto a side road. Ava looked up from her screen and asked, "Mom, did you forget the candy?" I forced a smile and lied gently, "Yeah, sweetheart. I forgot something. I'll explain later." Ethan gave me directions until we ended up on a narrow, unpaved road surrounded by towering pine trees. There were no other cars, no houses, just the sound of wind rustling through the forest. Felt like we had driven into a different world entirely. He stepped out and walked straight to the back of the SUV. I followed, my legs shaky, my thoughts racing. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Come here," he said quietly, lifting the trunk open. "You need to see this." I stepped closer, the gravel crunching beneath my feet. He unzipped the red duffel bag that my parents, Gloria and Frank, had handed us that morning. They had asked if we could bring it along because their car was too full. I hadn't thought twice about it. It looked like it was stuffed with clothes, maybe gifts for the cousins. But as Ethan pulled aside a couple of hoodies, my breath caught. Beneath the fabric were several tightly sealed plastic packages, not toys or snacks, but something else, something unmistakable. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew enough to realize what it wasn't. These weren't innocent items. These were illegal substances, serious felony-level illegal. Enough to destroy our lives in an instant. I staggered back a step, as though the air had been sucked right out of my lungs. My voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "They put this in our car." "With our kids in the back seat," Ethan said, his jaw clenched, eyes dark with rage and disbelief. I felt sick. Not just the nausea of fear, but betrayal. My parents, my own parents, had handed us this bag. I had accepted it without question, smiled and thanked them like a fool. Why would they? I couldn't even finish the sentence. I didn't know what I was asking. Why would they endanger us? Why would they use us as mules? Why would they do something this reckless? Evil? Ethan was silent for a moment, staring into the woods like he was trying to keep his fury from boiling over. Then he zipped the bag closed with careful precision. "We can't go to the border," he said firmly. "We need to figure out how to get rid of this." Quietly, carefully. I nodded slowly, still frozen in place. The forest around us felt both safe and eerie. Isolated. Like the only place on Earth where we could process what was happening without being overheard or worse, pulled over. Back in the car, the kids were still oblivious. Liam had headphones in, head down, focused on his screen. Sophie was drawing on the back of a receipt with colored pens. Ava had fallen asleep, her small body curled like a cat against the door. I sat back in the driver's seat and stared ahead, hands gripping the wheel. My mind was racing. Questions collided. Should we call the police? But what if we're already implicated? What if the drugs have fingerprints on them, ours? What if it's too late? I looked at Ethan. "Do you think they planned this?" I asked quietly. "Do you think this was intentional?" His face twisted. "I don't know, but I can't pretend this was an accident." I nodded. Deep down, I agreed. My parents had always been complicated, manipulative at times, secretive. But this crossed a line I didn't even know existed. Suddenly, I remembered how Gloria had hugged me that morning, longer than usual. She'd smiled, her voice syrupy sweet as she said, "Thank you again, honey. You're really saving us." And Frank, gruff as always, had barely looked at me, just shoved the bag in my hands and muttered something about traffic. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now it played back in my mind like a warning I had missed. Ethan pulled out his phone but hesitated. "No calls. Not yet. Not until we figure out who we can trust." We sat there for a few more minutes in the silence, the forest thick around us, pressing in. That morning, we'd set out on a simple family road trip. A weekend of laughter, food, shared stories, and maybe a few awkward silences. I thought we'd be dealing with cousin drama, passive-aggressive comments, maybe a wine spill on a nice dress. But now, it felt like we were sitting on the edge of a crime scene. One wrong move and we could lose everything. And worst of all, someone in our family had done this. Someone we loved or thought we did. I reached back and gently tucked Ava's blanket around her. My fingers trembled. I had no idea what we would do next. I thought back to the past. My parents, Gloria, who used to work in real estate, and Frank, a former car salesman, had always lived for appearances. Their house was full of the latest gadgets and polished furniture, but I still remembered nights when I ate instant noodles for a week straight because the gas had been shut off. Image mattered more to them than stability. They wanted to be seen as successful, even if it meant pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. They often called me boring, sometimes with a laugh, other times with thinly veiled contempt. I was the cautious one, the planner, the one who double-checked everything and lived within her means. Not like Vanessa, my older sister, now 38, who had always been the favorite. Vanessa worked freelance in marketing, or at least that's what she called it, and moved through life with the same flair for theatrics as our parents. One month she was in Miami posting poolside photos, the next she was in a panic over overdue rent. Whenever she crashed, it was me she called. I'd lost count of how many times I had helped her just one last time. I had paid down their credit card debt, filed their insurance claims, found them new accountants when they ran into trouble. I had always shown up. Quietly, efficiently, without complaint. But 4 months ago, they asked for money again. This time it was for Vanessa's son's private school tuition, an elite academy that cost more than our family spent on groceries in 3 months. I said no. Not because I didn't care, but because I had 3 children of my own. Liam, Sophie, and Ava were growing fast, and every dollar we earned was already stretched thin. We weren't living lavishly, we were managing. Barely. Their reaction was swift and cold. Suddenly, I was ungrateful, stingy, and selfish. Gloria stopped texting. Frank avoided my calls. Vanessa posted cryptic quotes on Instagram about betrayal and people who show their true colors. Chill lasted for weeks. Then came the announcement about the family reunion in Vancouver. Out of nowhere, the frost melted. Gloria was warm again, calling me sweetheart and praising my reliability. Frank was polite, even solicitous. Vanessa sent heart emojis in the family group chat. I told Ethan I was suspicious, but I also felt guilty. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe they just wanted to reconnect. So when they asked me, ever so casually, to bring along a red duffel bag because their car was packed with decorations and food, I said yes without thinking. Sounded harmless. Reasonable even. But now, looking at those plastic-wrapped packages in the trunk, the truth was clear. I hadn't just been helping. I had been used. I had trusted them again, and this time they had put my entire family in danger. I sat on the edge of the car seat, my thoughts spinning. Finn stood nearby, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his jaw clenched. I turned to him, searching for some kind of answer, but he was already a step ahead. He had seen something I hadn't. I started to suspect something, he said quietly, almost to himself. Gloria's smile that morning, it was too tight. And Frank, he wouldn't look at me when he handed over the bag. It felt off. I nodded slowly, remembering the moment too. The forced cheer in my mother's voice. The way my father mumbled something vague and turned away. The time, I had chalked it up to typical family awkwardness. Now it felt calculated. They were nervous, Ethan continued. Not like people who are in a rush. Like people who are hoping they've pulled something off. I rubbed my forehead, feeling sick. You think they planned this? I don't know for sure, he said, but I don't think they cared what it would cost us. Or the kids. His voice cracked just slightly at the word kids, and I looked over my shoulder to the back seat where our 3 children were still blissfully unaware. My stomach turned. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about the people who raised me turning that trust into a weapon. How could they do this? They must have thought we'd never check the bag, I whispered. That we'd just drop it off at the house or leave it in a room. Ethan looked at me. Or they were counting on us getting through the border without inspection. And if we didn't, the silence between us filled in the rest. We'd take the fall. I thought about what that meant. Being detained. Being charged. Being separated from our kids. It was too much. I felt cold all over. And what if they've done this before? I asked, the thought suddenly hitting me. What if this wasn't the first time? Finn shook his head. If it was, they've been damn lucky. But no more. We're not letting them drag us into whatever mess this is. I stared down at my hands. They knew I'd say yes. They counted on it. That was the part that cut the deepest. They knew I would try to be the responsible one. The reliable daughter. The one who fixed things. And they had used me to carry something illegal across a national border. Not just without my consent, but without the slightest care for what it might cost. I feel like such an idiot, I said, my voice breaking. You're not, Ethan replied quickly. You're not. You were just doing what you always do, trying to keep the family together. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I leaned into him for just a second, letting the weight of it all settle. The betrayal. The danger. Terrifying almost. It was Ethan's instincts that saved us. If he hadn't noticed something off, if we'd made it 10 more minutes to the checkpoint, we could have been facing armed border agents, handcuffs, lawyers. Our children could have seen us dragged away. All because my parents didn't want to say no to something dark, something dangerous. And they hadn't even bothered to warn us. No backup plan. No second thought. Just silence and a suitcase full of ruin. I inhaled shakily. "We have to destroy it." Finn nodded, his voice steady. "We will. But first, we find a place where no one will follow us. Then we make sure there's no trace left." I turned to look out at the road ahead, long, winding, deserted. We had escaped the worst. But I knew this wasn't over. My parents might pretend nothing happened. Vanessa would act surprised. But now I saw them differently. Not as flawed people who made mistakes, but as people willing to sacrifice their own family to maintain a fantasy. And I wasn't going to let them do it again. We took the red duffel bag back to my parents' house and placed it quietly in the hallway, like a warning. A silent, heavy message: "We know what you did." I didn't say a word. I didn't wait for explanations. I locked the door behind me and walked away without looking back. My phone buzzed nonstop afterward, Gloria, Frank, even Vanessa, all calling, texting, trying to reach me. I ignored every single one. They didn't deserve my words anymore. But a few days later, they showed up, uninvited, at our front door. Gloria wore that all too familiar artificial smile, the one she used at PTA meetings or open houses when she wanted something. "We just needed a little help paying off some debts," she said in the most casual tone imaginable. "You wouldn't help, so we had no choice." I cut her off, my voice shaking with fury. "You almost ruined our lives. You put drugs in a car with your grandchildren sitting right there." Frank shuffled awkwardly behind her, eyes cast downward, mumbling under his breath. "It was just one time. No one was going to find out." I stared at them, my heart racing. The sheer audacity of it. "This isn't a misunderstanding," I said, my voice cold and clear. "This was a betrayal. You used me. You endangered my children. And now we're done." Gloria's fake smile faded into something colder, more defensive, as if she were the one who had been wronged. "I don't want you near my family again," I continued. "You don't call. You don't visit. And you do not speak to my children." They didn't fight it, not in that moment. Gloria just narrowed her eyes. Frank muttered something unintelligible and walked away. The door closed between us like a final punctuation mark. But it wasn't over. A few weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, I left work early to pick up the kids from school. It was supposed to be a quiet day. I had planned to take them for ice cream. But when I arrived, their teacher greeted me with a puzzled smile. "They've already been picked up," she said casually. "Their grandmother signed them out about 15 minutes ago." My heart stopped. "What?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Which grandmother?" "The one who usually wears the red scarf," she said. "She said it was a surprise." "Gloria." I didn't wait. I didn't say thank you. I ran, literally, back to the car and sped toward my parents' house, my thoughts a chaotic mess of fear, rage, and panic. When I arrived, the scene before me nearly knocked the breath from my chest. There was a party happening in the backyard. Balloons tied to lawn chairs. A cake with colorful frosting already half-eaten. Kids' music playing on a Bluetooth speaker. And there they were, my children, right in the middle of it all. Liam sat on the grass, hugging a massive, expensive Lego set. Ava was twirling with a brand new teddy bear in her arms, her ponytail bouncing. Sophie was at a picnic table, carefully coloring in a sketch pad while Gloria crouched beside her, praising every stroke. It was a performance. A manipulative, calculated display. They were playing the role of the perfect grandparents, warm, generous, loving, kind who throw parties and give gifts, kind every child dreams of. But I saw through it. Every balloon, every slice of cake, every toy was bait. I walked straight to the middle of the yard, my voice sharp and unwavering. "Get your things. We're leaving. Now. Kids looked up in surprise. Ava blinked. Sophie hesitated, looking back at Gloria, confused. Liam clutched the Lego box tighter. "But Mom," he said, "can I keep the Lego?" I didn't want to punish them for something they didn't understand. I nodded, forcing my voice to soften. "Yes, sweetie. But we're going home." I helped them gather their things while Gloria stood frozen, the smile gone from her face. Her expression twisted into something bitter. "You're making a scene," she hissed under her breath. I turned to her slowly. "You had no right to take them. No permission. No call. Nothing. They're our grandchildren," she snapped. "You don't get to erase us." "You did that yourselves," I said. "The moment you put them in danger." Kids and I walked to the car. I could feel her eyes burning into my back, but I didn't look. I just opened the doors and helped them climb in one by one. As I buckled Ava in, Gloria's voice rose behind me. "You'll come back. You always do." I paused, hand on the steering wheel, heart pounding. Not this time. I looked at the road ahead. My grip tightened. "No, Mom," I whispered. "You're wrong." And I drove away. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I could forgive harsh words, selfish decisions, even years of emotional manipulation. But endangering my children, dragging us into something criminal, then stealing my kids from school? That wasn't family. That was control. I had spent my whole life trying to be the good daughter, the dependable one, the peacemaker. I had bent over backward to keep things from falling apart, even when it cost me time, money, and peace of mind. But now something had shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of their disapproval, their anger, or their silence. I had 3 people in the back seat who depended on me to protect them. And I would. Whatever it took. This wasn't just a boundary. It was a wall. And this time it was staying up. That night I looked at Ethan and said quietly, "We have to leave." He didn't hesitate. He nodded, like it was something he had already thought about, maybe for longer than I realized. He didn't argue, didn't ask when or why. He simply said, "Yeah, we do." His company had a branch in Asheville, North Carolina, a few states away, peaceful, surrounded by mountains, and most importantly, close to his parents. They were the opposite of mine. Simple, humble, generous people who helped without expecting anything in return. Within 2 weeks, we packed up our lives in Seattle and left. No goodbye dinners. No farewell calls. We didn't tell anyone. We blocked numbers, changed our address, and deleted social media. It was a clean break, no leaks, no cracks. Just distance. Asheville welcomed us with soft hills, pine-scented air, and a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. The mountains loomed in the distance, steady and timeless, like they had been waiting for us. Liam joined his new school's basketball team and quickly made friends. Sophie, inspired by the sprawling views, began sketching the Blue Ridge Mountains in charcoal and pastel. Ava, full of imagination, told stories about our mountain house, where the trees whispered and the stones had names. Ethan's parents stopped by often, always with homemade cookies or fresh vegetables from the farmer's market. They played board games with the kids, taught them card tricks, and never once asked for anything in return. There was no guilt. No manipulation. Just kindness quietly offered. For the first time in a long time, we exhaled. And then, 6 months later, an email arrived. It was from Vanessa. The subject line was in all caps. "Urgent, read immediately." I paused for a moment before opening it. My stomach tightened instinctively, the way it always did when her name appeared. The message was short and dramatic, as always. "Flora, you need to know, Mom and Dad got arrested. They tried to cross the border again, this time by themselves. No one to help. No one to cover for them. They were caught. Facing charges. For years in prison. It's serious. I'm trying to find them a lawyer, but we can't afford it. I know you're upset, but please. They're still our parents. They need you. Please help." I sat there for a long time rereading it. Not surprised. Not shaken. Just tired. So they had tried again, this time without me as their shield. And now they were paying the price. 4 years. Not forever, but long enough to miss birthdays, holidays, seasons changing. And Vanessa, after everything, was asking me to step back in. To fix it. To clean up a mess I hadn't made. I replied simply, "I helped once. There won't be a second time." Then I deleted the email. No hesitation. No second thoughts. And I didn't feel guilty. 'Cause here in Asheville, life was beginning to make sense again. Liam laughed more. His room was full of trophies and sneaker catalogs. He practiced outside every evening, the thud of the ball against the driveway grounding me in the present. Sophie covered the walls with art. She painted sunsets over ridges and waterfalls she hadn't even visited yet. She said she wanted to be an artist and a geologist because rocks, in her words, had feelings too. Ava narrated bedtime stories about the singing mountain, where trees danced and the moon told secrets to little girls. Her imagination was brighter, freer, like something had been unlocked inside her. Finn slept deeper. He didn't check the security cameras at night anymore. He smiled more. And when he looked at me, it wasn't with concern or exhaustion, it was with quiet, enduring gratitude. As for me, I stopped translating guilt into silence. I no longer walked on eggshells, wondering when the next emotional landmine would explode. I didn't chase apologies. I didn't explain my choices to people who twisted my words. Sometimes I still wondered if I'd been too harsh. Cutting off my family had been too final, too brutal. I asked myself whether forgiveness was supposed to come quicker or softer. But then I'd watch Liam score another basket and grin, or see Sophie proudly hang her latest drawing on the fridge, or hear Ava, curled up in her blanket, whispering, "Mama, today the mountain said hi to me," like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I would remember. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about peace. Peace for my children, who deserved to grow up without the weight of manipulation. Peace for my husband, who had always supported me and never asked for anything in return. And peace for myself, for the woman who finally, after years of being the fixer, the peacemaker, the boring one, had chosen herself. I stood on the porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching the mist roll down the hills like slow-moving silk. The air smelled of pine and promise. And I knew with more certainty than I'd ever known anything before. I had made the right choice. Here are 5 takeaways I hope resonate with you. First, trust your instincts. When my husband Ethan urged me to turn the car around, something felt off, but I acted on his gut feeling. That split-second decision saved us from disaster. Listen to that inner voice, it's often wiser than you think. Second, set boundaries even with family. For years, I played the responsible daughter, bailing out my parents and sister. But their betrayal, hiding illegal substances in our car, showed me that love doesn't mean tolerating harm. Boundaries protect your peace. Third, protect what matters most. My kids, Liam, Sophie, and Ava, were in that car. Realizing my parents risked their safety snapped me awake. Prioritize those who depend on you, even if it means tough choices. Fourth, don't fear starting over. Moving to Asheville, North Carolina was daunting, but it gave us a fresh start. The mountains, my kids' laughter, and a drama-free life proved that change, though scary, can be liberating. Finally, let go of guilt. I struggled with cutting off my parents, but their arrest for smuggling confirmed I made the right call. Guilt can trap you, release it to move forward. These lessons weren't easy, but they shaped me into someone stronger, freer, and fiercely protective of my family. If my story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world, and I'd love to keep sharing stories that inspire and empower. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss my next video. Thank you for being here.